Welcome, restless souls, to Carman's Crypt. I'm Carman, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close, the candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carman's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carman's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. The first thing Andrew Hale saw when he woke up in the hospital was his wife's wedding ring in a plastic evidence bag on the table beside his bed. He did not remember what it was at first. It looked too small to belong to the life he remembered. A pale gold loop, bent slightly out of shape, resting in a clear pouch with a red label and black handwriting he could not read because his eyes would not focus. The room smelled like bleach, plastic, and something sour under his own skin. Machines whispered beside him. Somewhere a monitor beeped with the steady patience of a thing that did not care whether a person lived or died. Andrew tried to turn his head, and pain opened inside him like a trap door. A nurse appeared, then a doctor, then his brother Daniel, pale and stiff in the doorway, wearing the face people wear when they have already cried somewhere else and trying not to do it again. Andrew asked for Aaron. His throat was raw, and the name came out broken, more air than sound. Daniel's face collapsed. That was when Andrew remembered headlights. Rain hammering the windshield. Aaron laughing because he had spilled coffee on his shirt 5 minutes after leaving the gas station. The dog-shaped air freshener swinging from the mirror. A joke gift from her because he still talked about Buster, his childhood golden retriever, as if the animal had been a saint with paws. Then white light. Horn. Aaron's hands flying up. The world turning sideways. Glass glittering like ice. And sound so loud it erased everything after. Where is she? Andrew asked again, though Daniel's face had already answered. His brother stepped closer, and Andrew saw that Daniel had bloodshot eyes and one sleeve of his jacket was damp from the rain outside. She didn't make it, Daniel said. The words landed, but they did not enter him. Not right away. They hovered above the bed like insects. Andrew looked back at the plastic evidence bag. Aaron's ring. Bent. Alone. He screamed until the stitches in his chest tore open. They kept him in the hospital for 9 days. Broken ribs, fractured collarbone, concussion, deep cuts across his scalp and shoulder, 2 surgeries for internal bleeding. People told him he was lucky. They said it with gentle voices, as if luck had not left the only person he loved folded inside a crushed passenger seat on County Road 16, while rainwater filled the ditch around her. The man who hit them had been drunk. His name was Travis Bell, 27 years old, 2 prior DUIs. He had walked away with a broken wrist and a bruised cheek. Andrew learned this from Daniel, who tried to keep the details from him until Andrew threatened to check himself out and find a phone. He'll be charged. Andrew stared at the ceiling. Charged? Vehicular manslaughter. Maybe more. Maybe. Daniel said nothing. Andrew closed his eyes and saw Aaron's hands flying up again, her fingers spread, her ring flashing. When Andrew finally came home, the house did not recognize him. It sat at the end of Pine Hollow Road under dripping oak trees, quiet and blue in the evening rain. Aaron's herb planters sagged on the porch. Her rain boots stood by the door, one tilted against the other, still caked with dirt from the garden. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender detergent, and the coffee she used to grind every morning. A mug set in the dish rack, Her blue sweater hung over the back of a chair. Andrew stood in the kitchen until Daniel took the keys from his hand and guided him to the couch. "I can't stay tonight," Daniel said. "No, you shouldn't be alone." "I'm not alone." Daniel looked around the silent room, then at Andrew. Andrew did not explain. He could not tell his brother that the house was full of Erin in the worst possible way. Her absence had weight. It occupied the hallway, the bedroom, her half of the closet. It sat beside him on the couch like a patient ghost. Daniel left after making soup Andrew did not eat. That night, Andrew slept in his recliner because he could not bear the bed. Rain scratched at the windows. The pain medication pulled him under and spat him back up every hour. At 2:13 a.m., he woke to the sound of claws clicking on the kitchen tile. He opened his eyes. The house was dark except for the weak glow of the microwave clock. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then he heard it again. 4 paws. Slow. Familiar. Andrew held his breath. His ribs throbbed beneath their bandages. He reached for the lamp and knocked over an empty water glass instead. It hit the floor and shattered. The clicking stopped. Something breathed in the kitchen. Not a person. Too slow. Too wet. Too close to the floor. Andrew should have been afraid. Some part of him was. A small animal part buried beneath sedatives and grief. But another part, an older part, lifted his head inside him. "Buster?" he whispered. A shape moved in the dark. The dog stepped into the living room as if he had only been outside for 5 minutes. Golden fur, damp at the tips. Broad head, white blaze on the chest shaped like a crooked thumbprint. One torn left ear from the barbed wire fence behind Andrew's childhood home. Brown eyes bright as polished walnuts. Mud caked his paws and clung between his toes. His tail wagged once, slowly, sweeping the shadows behind him. Andrew forgot how to breathe. Buster had died when Andrew was 15. Cancer in the spleen. His father had buried him beneath the sycamore tree behind their old farmhouse, wrapped in Andrew's Star Wars blanket because Andrew had refused to let him go into the ground with nothing soft around him. Andrew had sat beside that grave until dark, one hand on the fresh dirt, promising he would never love another dog as much. And now Buster stood in his living room, exactly as he had been on the best day Andrew could remember. 5 years old, strong, healthy, waiting. Andrew began to cry. The dog crossed the room in 3 silent strides and pressed his head into Andrew's lap. He smelled like rain, warm fur, and the creek behind the farmhouse. Andrew touched the torn ear. The old scar was there. So was the small knot on his front leg from the time he had leapt off the porch chasing a squirrel. "No," Andrew whispered. "No, no, no." Buster whined and pushed closer. Andrew buried both hands in his fur and sobbed so hard the pain in his ribs became white and enormous. The dog did not move. He did not lick Andrew's face as he used to. He simply held still beneath Andrew's hands, solid and impossible, while the broken house breathed around them. In the morning, Buster was still there. Andrew found him sitting at the foot of the recliner, eyes open, tail curled neatly around his paws. There was no leash, no collar, no explanations. Muddy prints led from the kitchen door to the living room, but the door was locked. The deadbolt was turned. The chain hung in place. Andrew called Daniel. "I need you to come over." Daniel arrived 20 minutes later, carrying grocery bags and wearing the irritated fear of a man prepared to find his grieving brother in some new and terrible condition. He stopped in the doorway when he saw the dog. "Where'd you get the dog?" Andrew sat on the couch, one hand resting on Buster's head. "It's Buster." Daniel stared. "What?" "It's Buster." Daniel set the groceries down slowly. "Andrew, I know." "No, you don't know. Buster died when we were kids." "I know that." "This isn't funny." "Do I look like I'm laughing?" Daniel looked at the dog. The dog looked back at him. Something changed in Daniel's face. Not belief, not yet. Recognition moved there unwillingly, like a hand pressing against cloth from the other side. "That ear," Daniel said softly. Andrew nodded. Daniel crouched. "Buster?" The dog's tail thumped once. Daniel made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. He reached out, then hesitated. Buster lowered his head and allowed Daniel's hand to touch the fur between his ears. "This is impossible," Daniel said. "Yeah, maybe he's from the same bloodline. Maybe someone found old photos. His grave is 3 counties away." Daniel stood too quickly. "You need to rest. I need someone to tell me I'm not insane." Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. "You're not insane." But he would not stay in the house long after that. He kept looking at Buster when he thought Andrew could not see him, and each time, the dog's eyes were already on him. Days passed, then weeks. Andrew did not return to work. He moved through the house like a man underwater. Condolence cards arrived. Casseroles appeared on the porch. Aaron's sister called and cried into his voicemail. Lawyers called. Insurance people called. A victim advocate called and said Travis Bell's hearing had been scheduled. Through all of it, Buster remained. He never slept. At first, Andrew thought he simply did not see it. Dogs slept in pieces, after all. A nap here, a doze there. But Buster did not. At midnight, he sat in the hallway outside the bedroom door while Andrew lay awake staring at Aaron's pillow. At 3 a.m, he sat beside the front door. At dawn, he stood at the kitchen window watching the tree line, his ears angled forward, body still as a carving. Andrew tried to make him eat. Buster sniffed the bowl, then looked at Andrew with mild disappointment. He drank water sometimes, but not much. He never begged, never scratched, never whined to go outside. Yet every morning there were muddy paw prints somewhere in the house. Always mud, even when it had not rained. The first person to disappear was Travis Bell. Andrew saw him at the courthouse 3 weeks after the funeral. Travis stood across the hall in a cheap suit with his arm in a brace, flanked by his lawyer and his mother. He looked younger than Andrew expected, softer. His hair was gelled badly, and his face had the dull gray cast of someone hungover or afraid. When he glanced over, their eyes met. Travis looked away first. Something inside Andrew tore loose. "You killed her," he said. Daniel grabbed his arm. "Andrew, you killed my wife." Travis's mother began to cry. His lawyer stepped forward and said something about not speaking directly to his client. Andrew lunged. Pain exploded through his chest, but he barely felt it. Daniel and a bailiff held him back. Travis stumbled away, eyes wide. "I hope you rot," Andrew snarled. "I hope something drags you screaming into the dark." That night, Buster stood at the foot of Andrew's bed, staring at the window. The room was cold. Andrew woke because the dog had begun to growl. It was a low sound, deep enough to vibrate in the mattress. Andrew sat up, wincing. "What is it?" Buster did not look up. His lips peeled back from teeth too clean, too long in the moonlight. Outside, something moved in the yard. Andrew saw only a flicker between the trees. A pale face, a hand, his own reflection. He reached for the lamp. Buster sprang. The window exploded inward. Glass burst across the room. Andrew shouted and threw an arm over his face. Buster went through the window without slowing, a golden blur swallowed by moonlight and rain. For half a second, there was silence. Then a man screamed. It came from the woods beyond the yard, high and wet and full of disbelief. Andrew staggered to the broken window, bare feet crunching glass. His chest burned. Cold rain blew across his face. The screaming stopped with a sound like a melon dropped from a roof. Andrew whispered Buster's name. The dog returned at dawn. He pushed through the kitchen door, though it was still locked. Mud covered him to the shoulders. His muzzle was dark. Something stringy clung between his teeth and slid free onto the tile with a soft slap. Andrew stared at it. It was a tendon, or a strip of fat, or nothing. His brain refused to name it. Buster sat and wagged his tail once. The news broke that afternoon. Travis Bell had vanished from his mother's house sometime after midnight. Police found the back door torn off its hinges and drag marks leading into the woods behind the property. There was blood on the porch, a lot of it. Search dogs refused to follow the trail past the creek. Andrew watched the report with the sound off. Buster lay beside the couch with his head on his paws, eyes open. Andrew told himself he should call someone. He should tell Daniel. He should tell the police about the broken window, the blood, the thing on the tile he had wrapped in paper towels and thrown into the outside trash with shaking hands. Instead, he sat very still and felt, beneath the horror, a dark and shameful warmth. Travis Bell was gone. Aaron was still dead, but Travis Bell was gone. That night, Andrew slept for 6 hours. After Travis, the house changed. The silence deepened. The air grew damp no matter how high Andrew turned the heat. The muddy prints became more frequent, appearing in places Buster had not been. Across the ceiling, above the bed, inside the shower, on Erin's side of the closet, where her dresses hung untouched. Once Andrew opened the medicine cabinet and found a single paw print stamped on the mirror from the inside. He stopped inviting people over. Daniel came anyway. "You can't keep doing this," he said one afternoon, standing in the kitchen while Buster watched from the hall. "Doing what?" "Hiding. Letting that thing sit there." Andrew's hand tightened around his coffee mug. "Don't call him that. I don't know what he is. He's Buster." "Buster's dead." Andrew looked down into his coffee. "So is Aaron." Daniel flinched. The dog rose. It was a small movement, silent except for the faint click of claws on wood. But Daniel heard it. He turned. Buster stood in the hall, head low, eyes fixed on him. "Andrew," Daniel said carefully. "Then stop. I'm trying to help you." "No, you're trying to take away the only thing left." "That is not a dog," Buster growled. The sound filled the kitchen. The windows trembled in their frames. Daniel backed toward the door. "You need to get it out of this house." Andrew stood. "Leave. Please leave." Daniel's eyes shone. "I'm scared for you." Andrew laughed once, a brittle, ugly sound. "I'm not the one you should be scared for." Daniel left. For 2 nights, Andrew did not answer his calls. On the 3rd morning, Daniel's wife, Rebecca, showed up sobbing on the porch. Daniel had disappeared. His truck was found at the edge of Pine Hollow Creek, driver's door open, keys still in the ignition. The mud around it was churned to soup. Searchers found his phone crushed beneath the rear tire. They found one shoe. They found blood in a long smear across the rocks leading down the water. And beside the smear, pressed deep in the mud, were paw prints. Large, round, perfect. Andrew vomited in the sink until there was nothing left in him. Buster sat in the kitchen doorway, watching. "What did you do?" Andrew whispered. The dog tilted its head. "What did you do?" Buster's tail moved once across the floor. Andrew backed away. For the first time since the night the dog had returned, he truly saw him. Not the soft ears, not the old familiar blaze on his chest, not the brown eyes he had loved since he was 6 years old. He saw the mud that never dried in the pads of his feet. He saw the way his ribcage did not rise and fall unless he wanted it to. He saw that the dog's shadow did not match his body. It stretched too long behind him, lean and bristling, with something like antlers or broken branches rising from its head. Buster smiled. Dogs do not smile, Andrew thought. But Buster did. Rebecca screamed at Andrew at the funeral. It happened in the church basement afterward, between trays of untouched sandwiches and sweating pitchers of tea. She slapped him hard enough to split his lip and said Daniel had been afraid of him, that Daniel had called her the night before he disappeared and told her Andrew was not safe in that house. "What happened to him?" she demanded. "What did you do?" Andrew stood there with blood in his mouth and no answer. Buster waited outside the church in the rain. People noticed him. Of course they did. A beautiful golden retriever sitting alone beneath the portico, soaked but calm, watching everyone who came and went. Children tried to approach him. Their parents pulled them back. The dog's eyes never left Rebecca. Andrew saw her through the church window, saw the moment she noticed. Her face tightened with disgust. "Is that the dog?" she whispered. Andrew did not answer. That night he locked Buster in the garage. It was the first decisive thing he had done in weeks. He lured the dog in with his old leash, the one he had bought in some insane attempt to pretend things were normal. Buster followed willingly, paws clicking on concrete. Andrew backed out, slammed the door, and locked it. "I'm sorry," he said through the wood. From the other side came silence. Andrew pressed his forehead to the door. "You can't hurt anyone else." Still silence. He went upstairs and found every light in the house on, though he had left them off. Erin stood in the bedroom. For one impossible second, joy detonated in him. Then she turned. Her face was wrong, not destroyed, not bloody, not the way he had imagined her after the crash. Worse, it was unfinished, as if grief had tried to sculpt her from memory and failed. One eye sat too low. Her mouth sagged at one corner. Her hair hung wet around her face, dripping onto the shoulders of the sweater she had worn the night she died. "Andrew," she said. Her voice was full of gravel and rainwater. He could not move. She lifted one hand. The fingers bent backward, all of them. "Why did you let him in?" Behind him, claws clicked on the stairs. Andrew spun. Buster stood at the top step. The garage door was still locked. Andrew knew it was. He knew it the way he knew his own name. But the dog stood there anyway, wet and golden and patient, a piece of the past wearing teeth. When Andrew looked back, Erin was gone. Only water remained on the floor. The next morning, Rebecca was missing. This time, there were witnesses. A neighbor saw something outside her house at 4:40 a.m. A large dog, he told police. Maybe a golden retriever, though it moved strangely. Too low, he said. Too fast. Rebecca had opened her front door for reasons no one could explain. Security footage from across the street caught her standing in the doorway in her nightgown, one hand lifted as if greeting someone she knew. Then the porch light went out. The camera recorded audio. First, Rebecca saying, "Daniel?" Then barking. Not a dog's bark, exactly. Too deep, too layered. A sound with dirt inside it. Then Rebecca screaming so loudly the audio distorted. Police found her front hallway painted with blood. Something had pulled her through the doorway with enough force to break both sides of the frame. Her fingernails were embedded in the wood. One was still attached to the fist knuckle. No body, only muddy paw prints leading down the steps, across the lawn, and stopping dead in the middle of the street. That afternoon, 2 detectives came to Andrew's house. Buster sat beside his chair. Detective Lane was older, heavy-set, with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. Detective Morrell was younger, sharp-faced, suspicious in a way that felt almost eager. They asked about Daniel, Rebecca, Travis Bell, the accident, Erin. They asked if Andrew owned a dog. Andrew looked at Buster. The detectives looked too. "Name?" Morrell asked. "Buster." Lane wrote it down. "How long have you had him?" Andrew's mouth went dry. "Since I was a kid." Morrell stopped writing. "Excuse me?" "He was my childhood dog." Lane glanced at Morrell. Andrew laughed softly. He could hear how insane it sounded. And once he started laughing, he could not stop. It climbed out of him like rats from a wall. Morrell stood. "Mr. Hale, we're going to need you to come with us." Buster's head lifted. "No," Andrew said quickly. Lane's hand moved toward his holster. "Easy. I'll come. Just don't touch him." Morrell made the mistake of stepping toward the dog. Buster opened his mouth. The room went black. Not dark, black. complete and distant, as if the world had been dropped into a sack. Andrew heard Morrell scream. He heard Lane shout. He heard furniture overturn, glass break, a wet crunch. Another scream suddenly cut short. Something hot sprayed across Andrew's face. He fell backward over the chair, crawling blind, hands slipping in something thick on the floor. A flashlight beam snapped on, spinning wildly. For half a second, Andrew saw Detective Morrell suspended near the ceiling. Buster had him by the throat. But Buster was no longer the size of a retriever. His body filled the room, shoulders hunched against the ceiling, fur hanging in wet clumps, jaws stretched far wider than any animal's mouth should open. His eyes were still brown, still familiar, and that was the worst part. Morrell kicked weakly. Blood poured down Buster's chest, vanishing into the golden fur. Lane fired twice. The gunshots cracked through the house. Buster dropped Morrell and turned. The bullets had gone into his side. Andrew saw the holes open in the fur, saw black mud ooze instead of blood. The dog lunged. Lane screamed once. When the lights came back, both detectives were gone. Not dead on the floor. Gone. The room was wrecked. Blood soaked the rug. The front door hung open. Rain blew in. Muddy prints covered every surface. Walls, ceiling, furniture, Andrew's own chest. Buster sat in the middle of all of it, normal-sized again, panting happily. A human tooth rested on his tongue. Andrew ran. He did not take shoes. He did not take keys. He ran through the back door into the rain and down the slope behind the house, branches whipping his face, mud sucking at his bare feet. His ribs screamed, his lungs burned. He heard nothing behind him, which was worse than hearing pursuit. He reached Pine Hollow Creek and fell hard on the bank. Water rushed black over stones. He crawled through it, gasping as cold seized his legs. On the far side, he dragged himself up and looked back. Buster stood on the opposite bank. He was dry. Rain fell through him without touching him. "Stay away from me," Andrew screamed. The dog wagged his tail. Andrew sobbed, staggered up, and ran toward the old county road. A truck nearly hit him 10 minutes later. The driver, a woman in a feed store cap, slammed on her brakes and shouted something he did not understand. Andrew grabbed the door handle and begged her to drive. She took him to the sheriff's station. By then he was laughing again. They put him in an interview room with a blanket around his shoulders. Someone gave him coffee. Someone else took photos of the blood on his clothes. Andrew told them everything. He told them about Buster's grave, the muddy prints, Travis, Daniel, Rebecca, the detectives. He told them the dog never slept. The sheriff listened, with the expression of a man watching a bridge collapse in the distance. Then the lights flickered. Andrew stopped talking. From somewhere in the station came a faint click. Claws on tile. The deputy by the door frowned. "What was that?" Andrew began to shake his head. "No," he whispered. "No, please." Someone screamed in the lobby. The sheriff stood, hand on his gun. The door to the interview room burst inward, and a deputy stumbled through with his face missing from the nose down. He hit the table and slid to the floor, making a bubbling sound through the ruin of his mouth. Behind him, Buster entered. His fur shone under the fluorescent lights. His paws left perfect muddy prints on the white tile. In his mouth, he carried something that looked like a hand. The sheriff fired until the gun clicked empty. Buster did not flinch. "Please," he said. "Please, boy." Buster dropped the hand. The dog looked wounded. That expression nearly broke Andrew. For a moment, beneath the blood and horror, he saw the animal who had slept beside his bed during thunderstorms, who had dragged him by the sleeve away from a copperhead in the yard, who had waited at the school bus stop every afternoon like Andrew was the only miracle worth believing in. "Good boy," Andrew had whispered into his fur the night Buster died. "Good boy, good boy, good boy." The memory opened, and with it came another. Not just the grave, not just the sycamore tree. Andrew remembered what he had said after his father went inside, leaving him alone with the mound of dirt and the little wooden cross. "I wish you would come back," 15-year-old Andrew had sobbed. "I wish you could always protect me. I'd give anything." The air had gone cold. He had forgotten that part, or buried it. The way the leaves had stopped moving, the way something under the sycamore had shifted, deep in the woods, the way the fresh grave had settled by an inch, as if something below had heard him turn his grief into a key. "I'd give anything." Andrew looked at Buster. "What did I give?" The dog's tail stilled. In the hallway, people were dying. Gunshots, screams, the wet rip of bodies opening. Buster ignored all of it now. He watched Andrew with those patient brown eyes. Andrew understood. He had not given anything yet. The bill had only come due. He ran before he could think. He shoved past the sheriff, slipped in blood, and crashed through the emergency exit into the storm. Behind him, Buster barked, and the sound shattered every window in the station. Andrew knew where to go. He stole a cruiser from the parking lot with the key still inside and drove barefoot through sheets of rain, the siren wailing though he did not remember turning it on. He drove 3 counties over, through the town where he had grown up, past the shuttered feed store and the church with the leaning steeple, out to the old farmhouse that had been abandoned since his parents died. The sycamore still stood behind it, huge, black, twisted against the lightning. Andrew parked in the weeds and stumbled out with a shotgun he had taken from the cruiser. He did not know if it would help. He did not think anything would, but carrying it made him feel less like prey. Buster's grave was beneath the tree. The wooden cross was gone, rotted away decades ago, but Andrew knew the spot. His knees buckled when he reached it. Rain ran down his face. He dug with his hands. The earth was soft, too soft. It opened almost eagerly beneath his fingers, black mud packed with roots that twitched when he touched them. He dug until his nails tore and bled. He dug until he found cloth. The Star Wars blanket. Andrew pulled it free. Inside was no skeleton, no bones, only a hollow lined with wet golden fur and hundreds of teeth, human and animal, packed together like seeds. Behind him, something panted. Andrew turned. Buster stood at the edge of the grave. But not Buster. Not anymore. The thing wearing him unfolded in the rain. Its head split along the muzzle, opening sideways and downward, revealing row after row of teeth slick with mud. Its paws stretched into long black fingers tipped with claws. Beneath the golden fur, shapes moved as if many small bodies were crawling under the skin. Its tail wagged once, happily, obscenely. Then Aaron stepped from behind the tree. Daniel came after her. Rebecca, Travis Bell, the detectives, the deputies, all of them pale and muddy, faces slack, eyes shining with the same brown light. They stood in a ring around the grave, dripping rain and grave water. Erin smiled with her broken mouth. "Good boy," she said. The thing turned its ruined head toward her, pleased. Andrew raised the shotgun and fired into the grave. The blast punched through the fur-lined hollow. The ground screamed. Not the creature, the ground. The sycamore split from root to crown, and from inside its trunk poured mud, blood, and the bones of things that had been loved too much. Cats, dogs, birds, children's lost pets, collars, tags, tiny skulls with roots threaded through their eyes. Buster screamed then, and the sound was almost a dog's cry. Almost. The dead ring closed in. Andrew broke the shotgun open, reloaded with shaking hands, and fired again into the tree. Lightning struck. White fire swallowed the sycamore. The blast threw Andrew backward. For one bright instant, he saw Buster as he had been, just a golden retriever with a torn ear, standing beneath the burning tree with his head lowered. No mud, no teeth, no shadow. Andrew crawled toward him. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. Buster looked at him. The dog's eyes softened. Then Aaron's hands burst through his chest from behind. Andrew looked down at the fingers protruding from his ribs. They were wet, gray, and bent backward. He tried to breathe. Blood filled his mouth. Aaron leaned over his shoulder, her cold cheek against his. "You promised," she whispered. Buster began to wag his tail. Andrew fell into the open grave. The mud received him gently. When they found the old farmhouse 3 days later, it was burned to the foundation. The sycamore was gone, split and blackened, its roots exposed like the ribs of a giant animal. They found no bodies, only a police cruiser in the weeds, a broken shotgun, and a trail of muddy paw prints leading away from the grave. The prints crossed the yard, passed through the ashes of the house, and continued down the road for almost a mile before stopping at the mailbox of a small blue home where a widow named Mrs. Talbot lived, along with her memory and a framed photograph of a little black spaniel that had died when she was 12. That night, Mrs. Talbot woke to the sound of claws clicking in her kitchen. She sat up in bed, heart fluttering. "Pepper?" she whispered. In the darkness, something wagged its tail. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carman's crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media, or on my website, carman-carrion.com. Who knows? Your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carman's crypt, every fear comes to life, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.